everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Eternal Void, but with Jazz. I'm one of your hosts, Gabby, and
Michelle. Hey, what's up?
And today we're joined by Michael M. Hughes.
Hey there.
Hi. Michael M. Hughes is an author, speaker, instructor, and magical thinker. He gives regular sold-out presentations on magic, tarot, witchcraft, energy work, and all things weird and wonderful at venues across the United States. Michael teaches popular tarot, magic, and writing courses, both in person and online, and organizes workshops and retreats. Hi, Michael. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We're super excited for this chat. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, really excited. Like we were talking a little bit before we started recording. We've all been like mutuals and various social media platforms. It seems like forever, and really excited to have this conversation with you and just see what's been going on, like face to face, more or less. Of course, you're the author of Magic for the Resistance, and I think we just had a second edition of that published pretty recently. Let's start there. I'd love to hear a little bit about the second edition going on. That's honestly like one of the first things magical that I ever encountered coming into this scene as like more from like a UFO materialist, like conspiracy kind of person 6 or 7 years ago. And I was like, magic, resistance? Oh, hell yes. Tell me more, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was all birthed out of something that I really didn't think would catch fire like it did, and that's putting it lightly. That was my ritual I wrote to bind a certain orange authoritarian in the 2000. Basically, I started it in 2017 after his first election because we were seeing like how horrible it was. Now, granted, we've seen a lot more horror since, but most of us who paid attention were like, this is going to be bad. These next 4 years are going to be really rough. So I was thinking, I've always been an activist, and a friend and I were sitting around just like late night drinking beers and talking about like, what are we going to do? You know, what can we do to make a difference? And we thought, well, because I used to be a DJ too. I used to DJ like parties and things. So I was like, well, maybe I'll DJ and we'll give the money to like, you know, the Human Rights Campaign or to Planned Parenthood or something like that. And but then I've always believed that, in particular nowadays, with so much social media, so many channels of information overload, that in order to really break through, if you want to do something, it has to be kind of weird and out of left field. And I always loved the yippies in the 1960s and 1970s, and especially like when they attempted to levitate the Pentagon. I loved the group called Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell. And they used to call their actions zaps. And they would do these zap actions while they were dressed up like witches. So that kind of thing was like, I love creative activism. And an example of the current example that really, I think, aligns with that sort of vibe is the people in the frog costumes out in Seattle and Portland, you know, and I was just like, that is beautiful. Like doing something that people, you know, normies go, what is that? You know, you need to do something that breaks through, because like I look back, especially after that first election, that first cycle of horror that we went through. You know, there were like the Women's March, the March for Science, things like that. Beautiful, well-intentioned, and amazing demonstrations of like humanity. But people go do them and they might get a blip in the media and then it's over. And So that was a long way to go back to that night of drinking beer with my friend. And I said, what about a ritual? Like, what if people can engage in like a mass ritual at the same time? And he was like, you've had some real humdinger ideas, but he's like, that's really like, I don't know about that. And so he was a little skeptical, but I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. But I wrote up this binding spell because I'm really into magic and historical magic, and binding spells were like a huge thing in the Greco-Roman period and antiquity. People would try to bind other people from doing bad things. And I'm like, this is perfect. So I wrote this spell to bind this unnameable creature thing. And I posted it on a Medium, and I'm like, well, some friends of mine might get a kick out of it, blah, 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 blah. Well, it like exploded. And within days, literally days, like I would look at the stats of the story, and it was going up by the minute, by hundreds. And people were just sharing this, and people were just like, I've never done a spell in my life, but I'm good at, like, I tried everything else. Can I curse on this podcast?
Yes, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah. People were like, I've tried everything. People were saying like, we're doing everything we can and nothing's working. Fuck it. I'm just I'll do a spell. I'll join this spell. And people like all across Baltimore were like organizing to do it. But the people all over the world were doing this. I heard from friends in England who were in like a supermarket, and they heard, did you hear about that spell people are going to do on midnight? And it just like blew up. I was getting calls from CNN, and they're like, we want a video, we want footage. Fox was calling me. Tucker Carlson was trying to get me to be on a show. I mean, it was insane. My mind was like, I was having a hard time believing that it was happening. It was so surreal. So my favorite story about this is like CNN kept asking me, like, we want to send reporters out. We want to film people doing this. And I would ask all my friends, and they're like, no fucking way, man. I do not, I'm not going to be on TV to be, doxxed by crazy MAGA, and have people trying to kill me and shit. And I'm like, I totally understand that. So, but they kept asking. And finally, I did something kind of uncharacteristic. And I was like, I just lied. I told CNN, I said, I hear a bunch of witches are going to do this at Trump Tower in New York City. And they're like, awesome. We're sending our team. Because it was planned for like 2 weeks after I published it. It was this mass ritual was happening.
Yeah.
So the night of the ritual, and there are about 50 people, 50 of my friends are gathering in this like kind of wooded backyard in Baltimore where we have a big bonfire and shit. And I'm showing up. So I realized in order to like get my friends, to hang out, I need to get some like booze, So I stop at a liquor store on the way, and I've got, out in my car, I've got like my incense burner and all the paraphernalia for the ritual and stuff. And I run into the liquor store, and, I get like 3 cases of beer and some wine. And this woman, she was probably in her 20s, like at the register. She's like, oh, you look like you're having a party. And I said, yeah, well, we're binding the president tonight. And she goes, oh, do you have the unflattering photo? Like she knew, she's like, yeah, me and my friends are doing it later when I get off work. And I'm like, that gif of like the guy's head exploding, my head was just exploding and exploding for weeks because of this. So to wrap this up, like this is the night that it's happening all over the world. People, I know, like there's people over Baltimore getting it. There's kids. There's a kids binding ritual that's happening. Someone organized. So we do it, and it's I mean, it was a powerful moment. My friend was live streaming it on Facebook. I think we had like 20, 30,000 people or something were watching on just on Facebook. And then when it was over, I like my body just gave out. Like I just sat down on this log by the fire, and my friend comes walking up with his phone and he like holds it in my face. He's like, look at this. And it was CNN footage of witches at Trump Tower, like doing the ritual, sitting on the sidewalk outside of Trump Tower. So like even my bullshit that I made up like came true that night. And I just started laughing hysterically, so this thing
that's
just
wild.
And it was meant to happen like on the crescent, the last little sliver of the crescent moon, right each month. So it kept happening, and it's still happening. Like people still do it monthly, every month since like 2017. People have been doing this, so like almost 10 years. And so that's the long story long, I guess, not long story short, but so I'm like, well, and people were like looking at me like, okay, well, what else can we do? Like, are there other rituals? And we had this Facebook group with about 6,000 people, and we're like, well, yeah, we should do other things too. And that kind of led to me thinking, well, this could be a book, write about it.
Yeah.
And that became the first edition, which came out in 2018. Llewellyn Publishing put it out, and they gave me how many? Like they gave me like a month to finish this book, an 80,000 word book, because they wanted it to come out before the 2000 midterm elections. So it nearly killed me. Like I will never do that again. It was insane. Like it really literally almost killed me writing that book, but it's done. And it just came out in the new edition after we realized, well, we have to go through this cycle of horror again, because the American people, evidently don't mind fascism. So I put it out, I revised it, I wrote about the experience, that I just talked about and things like that. But there's a lot more in it. It basically, it's updated with some new spells, new rituals, new thinking, that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, I need to get my hands on a paper copy of the second edition. I bought the Kindle version of the first edition back when I first came across it. And I've got a couple questions about that actual binding ritual. So what all did it involve? An unflattering picture? And what I'm getting at is I seem to remember, tell me if I'm wrong, but there was something about a baby carrot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I originally, so I always believe that, especially with authoritarians and fascists, they hate being laughed at, particularly this guy. He hates when people make fun of him. So there was a lot of humor involved. And I initially, the basic spell uses a stubby orange candle for his like stubby orange fingers, I guess. But other people suggested like a baby carrot, which was beautiful. A Cheeto, things like that. And there's humor in it. Like when you burn the unflattering photo, and first of all, are there any flattering photos? I'm not really sure. But you burn the unflattering photo, and while it's burning, you say, "You're fired, you're fired, you're fired," as it's burning. So there's elements of like humor and just like, and the beauty of that ritual is like, it just makes you feel better. If nothing else, that became something that I realized after the fact is rituals like that. Maybe the best aspect of them is that they re-energize people. They like make you, they give you your power back, when you do it. And so many people told me that they were just feeling beaten down and depressed and completely out of energy, but they would do this and then they'd feel like, okay, I can go back and do what I need to do. I could write the letters and emails and go to the marches and make the phone calls and all that sort of thing. So that was really something I learned from this experience, is like rituals, maybe not learned, but had reinforced, is that rituals are really important things to regenerate yourself and your energy and your optimism.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And like, I love that you incorporated humor in it, especially because like that's like a common, component of like banishing magic too. Like if there's an entity, like a spirit that's really trying to scare you or, kind of break you down, like laughing at it, that breaks its spell. Because if you can laugh at it, what power does it really have over you anymore? Like it's not going to make you scared. It's funny.
Exactly. Yep. I love that. That's totally true. I believe that. And laughter can just break all sorts of negativity. If you just like, you don't scare me and you don't scare me anymore. Yeah. And it works. Yep. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Go ahead, Gabby.
Okay, yeah. I definitely do have some questions because, like, I know, this spell in particular, like these rituals in particular, inspired, a lot of other, political magic and other forms of, magical activism. And I just wonder, like, what advice would you give to people who are trying to create their own spells and rituals in this kind of like vein? Like, what would you say are the necessary components of successful political magic? And, maybe what are the common pitfalls that people fall into that maybe make it so it doesn't work, and what they can do to avoid those mistakes?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I got a lot of criticism, from people who have been doing magic for a long time, like Western magicians and witches and things like that. Most, I'd say, 80% of the occult or magical community were supportive. And I think that's because the magical community has become sort of a haven for marginalized and disenfranchised people. It's welcoming for the most part, but there are some crazy like right-wing freak magicians and things, and they came out of the woodwork. And I expected criticism from them. I expected criticism from like fundamentalist religious people and things like that. But what I didn't expect was like the criticism from, kind of ordinary witches and magicians and things. And there was an element of that, like, like you're not doing magic the right way was the common point. Even recently, an occultist that I've been friends with, who's very much on the side of, progressive political causes and things like that, he suddenly like was just criticizing me like great, like you're responsible. He basically said you and this witch-led movement against fascism are responsible for how bad fascism has gotten. So I just like, okay,
wow.
I can't talk to you anymore. And I just kind of like, I was a little shocked by that, but here's what I think of people that want to do political magic. And I think a lot of people misunderstood this binding spell in particular. And yes, it had an intention of stopping who from doing harm. Absolutely. And did it work? I don't know. He did lose, he lost an election. He was impeached multiple times. He was really under fire. Then he came back, sure, like a herpes outbreak or something that you think is gone, then it pops up again, or some malignant disease that's really what it felt like. So, a lot of people are like, well, clearly it didn't work. But what they don't understand is I look at magic in a really broad way. And one thing this ritual did, it kept, just like I mentioned a little while ago, it energized people to keep working to stop the madness that was happening. And that is an important aspect. So, everyone focused on, well, you wanted to get rid of this person. Clearly it didn't work. Well, that's only one aspect. And maybe it did work. It's hard to say what works and what doesn't, but what magic and ritual can do is keep you focused, keep you energized, keep you working on the things you care about. And it's not like spells you do that you can say, like, oh, I'm doing a spell because I need money to pay my rent. And then you do a ritual and then somehow the money, works out. That's great. And that kind of magic is wonderful. And I embrace that sort of magic too. But magic to me is like also art. And this whole experience and a lot of the rituals in the book are designed to, to have an impact on people, to build up the people doing them as much as it is for the actual end point. So I would tell people, in reference to your question, is realize that a really important aspect of magic is doing it for yourself, to keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself spiritually aligned, to keep, to stay in accordance with your principles and the things that you care about. And do magic, yes, for political ends, but also realize that the magic you're doing is like to keep yourself going, because it's really hard, as we all know, to stay motivated when every day you wake up and you see another atrocity, or like just recently, the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act, things like that are just that are pillars of democracy. All these things just collapsing or being eroded. The flood the zone with shit that these people are good at. And when the zone is flooded with shit, it gets overwhelming and we all get burned out. So my focus has changed so much in these past years of doing magic now and doing things to support people, to help people who are feeling burned out, to help activists stay focused and motivated and not falling to despair, because it's so easy. It's so easy to give in. And I don't blame people who are like, I can't, I'm not one of those people, but a lot of people are like, I can't watch the news. I can't take anymore. I can't pay attention. I get that. Yeah. But those of us who realize that we have to pay attention or we're going to lose everything, we can't not pay attention. So rituals are one way. Doing magic, doing rituals is one way we can keep our batteries filled. Yeah.
Oh, wow. There's so much good advice there. And yes to all of that. For half a second, I kind of felt like I was back in undergrad and like with one of my favorite religious studies professors. It was very nice.
That's great.
Also, yeah, you got like a little like foggy, bright light descending over you as you started going on that down that lane on your webcam was quite a nice cool illumination effect we got going on here in Zoom.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't even know what direction to go to. I love the whole magic is art thing. Gabby, what are you thinking?
Yeah. I like that you really highlighted that, the role of ritual in this. It's not just about achieving like that specific goal, it's also about energizing the people and inspiring the people. Because I know there are a lot of people out there where they want to make a difference, but like they don't know where to start, or they're afraid, of taking that first step. And, through these rituals, I feel like people can kind of, dip their toes in a little bit and experiment with it and build up that confidence. So maybe they start with, this ritual, and then next week they're writing a letter to their representatives, and, a month later they're, joining a protest for the first time. So like, yeah, just really focusing on how we can use ritual to build these routines of activism and really get the ball rolling in the right direction. So yeah, I really appreciate, what you're doing with that. You do have another political ritual going on right now. I believe it's called the White Candle Conspiracy. Could you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, that one was born out of seeing so many people so broken down and feeling alone and feeling overwhelmed and feeling like they just weren't making a difference, that nothing was making a difference. And there are more of us. That's what the White Candle Conspiracy tries to make tries to make that feeling very visceral and real. There are more of us. Like the people encouraging fascism are maybe a third of the broad people, the broad population. And that's bad, because that third, we know from political science, is sort of like can be the tipping point into some really dark, bad stuff. But there are more of us, and we need to realize that. So what the White Candle Conspiracy is, basically it's you get a nice big pillar candle, one of the wide candles, and it's a white candle, so you could just sit it out anywhere. That's part of the conspiracy of it. And it's a simple ritual. It's like an affirmation of principles of like love, equality, peace, compassion, that sort of thing. And really all it is an affirmation of those key principles that I think most of us embrace and think are the most important principles of all, being part of the broader human community, love, acceptance, community. And so what you do this little affirmation with this white candle. And as you do it, you visualize, like all these white candles, you visualize a map of either the United States or of the earth. And you visualize these little points of light, like coming alive all over the map. And what that does is it provides an image in your mind. And we know how images affect us, that everyone's connected. And then you start seeing little lines between all of these little lights connecting. So it's like a big net surrounding the country or the earth, however you want to visualize it. And it's also really simple and fast. It's like takes a minute to do. And everyone's encouraged to do it like roughly the same time at like 9 p.m. or, whatever, wherever it is in your time zone, so that you can visualize this is like a wave of lights coming on and just rolling across the planet. So that is, I wrote that because I realized, first of all, most people don't have a lot of time. The original binding ritual had to be done at midnight. And I personally got tired of the Tuesday night at midnight staying up. I still did it because it was important for me to do. And thousands, tens of thousands of people would do this. at the same time. But I was like, midnight's kind of late. Like, people can't, a lot of people do not stay up until midnight. A lot of people go to bed at 8 o'clock or whatever, and they were missing out on this. So this is designed so that you could kind of do it as like a rolling ritual. But it was important to help people feel less despair. And that's what this does. It says, when you do it, you commit to those principles of equality, of peace, of love, of compassion, of knowledge over ignorance, all the things that we see like being stomped on by fascism in our current era. And this is a way of saying, I believe in this. I will continue to advocate it. There are lots of other people like me around the world, and we're all doing this, and we're staying connected to each other. So it's a hopeful ritual, because so many people, especially on this little Facebook group, Magic Resistance, so many people were like, I can't, like, what do we do? What do we do now? Please, we need a rituals. Nothing's working. Help. And I just felt for those people, and I felt it too. So I developed this as like, this is an affirmation. This is a dedication to what we believe in. And it's a conspiracy hidden in plain sight, because you've got a white candle. You could leave it out. If I come over your house, I see your white pillar candle and I know you, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you wink, wink. You're doing this too.
Yeah, I really love that.
So that's the conspiracy.
I love that, because I feel like, fascism in particular, its goal is to make us feel isolated and alone. Like, that's why they go after social media. That's why they go after third spaces. They don't want us to form community, because if we're in a group, we're much harder to control and to manipulate. So like these little rituals, like on the surface, it might seem really simple, but it has just such like a huge impact psychologically, because yes, like you said, it reminds you like, no, you're not alone. The majority is on your side, and those people are out there. And, all it takes is just those couple little steps to really form that community and build those connections. And it makes us a lot harder to control.
Mm-hmm. Totally. That they want us to give up. They want us to say, I just can't do it anymore. That's how fascism always works. That's how it wins, is by grinding people down. And that they're very good at it. I mean, the flood the zone with shit. Like, if it's a brilliant tactic, because every day, if your focus is scattered and all you see is like bad thing, horrible thing, nightmarish thing, then it's very difficult to feel like you have agency. But we do have agency.
Absolutely. I love all of this so much. And honestly, this is something that I probably needed to hear. And I think a lot of other people do as well. I want to maybe change the direction just a little bit if I can. One of the things that we were talking about previously was your break with conspiracism. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit, because that was one of the kind of ways that you and I first met on social media, because this was many, many, many years ago. And we seemed like about at the same time, we were like, there's something very wrong here. What the fuck's going on? Right. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your break with conspiracism?
Yeah. Wow. I loved conspiracy, and I think, like you said, we were on kind of the same forums, and I grew up. I came of age in the 70s, and conspiracies were things like, is the government hiding UFOs? Was John F. the Kennedy assassination was like
right.
The uber conspiracy thing. And I had like dozens of books on that, and would listen to people like, Mark Lane, I loved it because it was fascinating, and there's so much material and good scholarship that was done. There's crappy scholarship too, but that's always the case. And it was just intriguing. And conspiracy thinking then was very much aligned with the left. You know, it was all about ferreting out what right wing elements of the government had done. You know, whether it's MK Ultra, whether it's, you know, lies during the Vietnam War, whether it's, you know, whether Kennedy was assassinated because he was going to, you know, blow the CIA into 1,000 pieces or something like that, the quote he said. So it was fascinating. I was really into it. And then there was a lot, some of the online groups that I was in, things started to change, and really 9/11 sort of like blew it all apart. I think there's a lot of really hinky stuff from 9/11. I was never of the, you know, it was all orchestrated aspect of conspiracy. I felt like more like certain elements may have kind of thought something like that might happen and thought they could benefit from it, but I wasn't like it was all, or I didn't really believe it was all orchestrated. That seemed a little far-fetched for me. And my thinking with conspiracies had changed in that I started realizing that, you know, in order to, instead of trying to prove a conspiracy, which is how a lot of people approach it, I realized that the best intellectual way to think about conspiracies is try to disprove the conspiracy. Like chemtrails, for people, I've been to conferences. There's a guy I called Chemtrail Guy that would come up to me at conferences and show me photos on his phone. Like, look at this one. This is a chemtrail. I'm like, it looks like a contrail to me, man. I grew up near an airport.
Yeah.
He's like, no, look. And he scrolled through his phone. Look at this one. This one's a chemtrail. And I said to him, I'm like, so how are they getting away with it? You know, like, how, first of all, you got to load this technology onto planes. And you're saying, like, you know, commercial aircraft are blowing these chemicals out. How are they getting it on the plane? Who's making them? Who's loading all this stuff on? How are the pilots not knowing about it? And so, like, the more you realize how big a conspiracy has to be and how many people are have to be involved, the more it starts to fall apart. Like, and I started encouraging people on these conspiracy forums. I'm like, interrogate your own beliefs. Like, take what you believe as the conspiracy and try to tear it apart. Like, that's the intellectually honest thing to do. And people didn't want to hear that. So 9/11 really kind of broke the conspiracy culture into a million pieces. And a lot of them became very right wing. And that's when, like, the ascendancy of Alex Jones, and particularly what really finally drove me away from conspiracy culture was Newtown. And when all those Sandy Hook and all those children getting murdered, and I had an actual personal link to that. I was watching, I was looking at the CNN website when that happened, the first breaking news about it. And I looked at one of the photos and there were people running. One of those people running was a friend of mine who lived at Sandy Hook, lived in Newtown. And I saw her face and I was like, oh my God, like, you know, I didn't know if it was one of her kids that was involved. Turns out she's a psychologist or therapist. And she knew some of her friends had children in that school that died. She knew that community. She worked as like a school counselor, as like an adjunct to the school counseling. So she knew those people. I'm looking at my friend with a horrified look on her face, like running. in one of those photos. And to see these sick, twisted assholes calling grieving parents crisis actors and things like that. Like, I was at a Fortean conference, and there was a guy there who was videotaping the presenters or whatever, and he started telling me the whole crisis actor thing, and I was shaking with rage. Like, I'm not a violent person, but I wanted to like tackle him. I wanted to hurt him because I'm like, you do not know what you're talking about. These people have lost their fucking children.
Yeah.
And you're calling them liars. Like, what is wrong with you? You're just some dude in Maryland. Like, you have no connection to these people. You're just reading this shit online, and you've decided that these parents are liars, that they're actors. Like, how dare you? And I was just so completely enraged, and I'm like, I can't do it anymore. And then Pizzagate came along, the dumbest, the most stupidest of conspiracy theories, and QAnon, and I realized conspiracy theory had been something that people would ask questions. It became not asking questions. It became, this is what we believe. Wayfair is trafficking children, and they're putting coded messages, and it became so absurd that, like, I just couldn't understand how anyone could. And then, of course, COVID. I watched it killed, it destroyed the alternative health movement. I mean, people sticking spoons on their face because they're magnetized, 5G waves and shit like that. I mean, I watched wellness and alternative health communities just be infiltrated by the shit. And some of it was like purposeful. Right-wing people saw, fascist lunatics saw an opening to be able to manipulate people, and they just like went full force. And this stuff had kind of been like, I first noticed it in the UFO community in the 90s. Like, there was a guy named Jeff Rentz.
Yes.
Probably still spouting garbage.
Just pulled up his website. It's still the same garbage. I found his website too in the 90s, and I almost got radicalized. Yeah.
I watched a friend of mine. She wrote a New Age book. She claimed that she was visited by some like entity or light being or whatever. And her first book, it was really kind of, it was a typical that kind of book, but it was very, it was very positive material, the typical sort of channeled, sort of Pleiadian light being sort of stuff. And it was innocuous, and she seemed like a nice person. She started appearing on Jeff Rentz's show, and suddenly she's talking about the protocols of the elders of Zion. She's talking about how it was just the most vile anti-Semitic stuff.
Yeah.
She was also, on me about fluoride and things like that. Like fluoride, her anti-fluoridation thing happened first, but then it suddenly became the Jews. The Jews are doing everything, and the Jews are controlling everyone. The Jews are evil. And I'm like,
and when it's not the Jews, it's the trans people. Yeah,
of course. Yeah. Now it's like shifting targets, and they'll go with anyone that they can demonize. And, it was just astonishing because Jeff Rentz, I found this website because it would have it was like a scrolling giant list of UFO stories, cryptids, paranormal stuff. Oh, interesting. I click on the link. He even plagiarized some of my blog posts. Then you start drilling down and you're like, wait a minute, here's like actual text from Nazis, Ernst Zundel. There was a guy named Ernst Zundel who wrote books about Nazi UFOs and shit and was just a straight up Nazi. So it was where I realized like these people are using, it's the honeypot idea. They used to call it, like, come for the UFOs, and then we'll serve you a sandwich of like hardcore Nazism.
Right.
So I finally said, like, I can't traffic in these circles anymore. I lost tons of friends. One particular group that we were involved with, Michelle, I know you know which one I'm talking about, just completely exploded. And people broke off, and I was kind of one of the louder people. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I think it was the Las Vegas shooting that was the kind of like the final straw. And a lot of us just said, we can't be part of this anymore. Like, we can't, because those of us who were like critical thinkers were being kind of ostracized, and we said, we're done. We're out of here.
Yeah, it became an entire in-group, out-group thing, which is what it always was to begin with, if you just didn't see it. And it's such an insidious way to lure people into fascism and Nazism, and just really twisting people's compassion almost like a horseshoe to where it turns back in on itself. And it's it's insidious, and it definitely, I still see its effects on a day-to-day, so it's something that's going to take ongoing compassion and education, hopefully, if we're lucky, to combat. And like you, it used to really trigger my rage button. Like, I used to get really enraged when I saw a lot of this stuff happening in real life, and that's never a good way to live. Like, it's just, like, there's a lot of stuff to be angry about that's happening, but like what Jeb down the corner believes about whatever is not one of them. There's so much work to be done in other ways, and so many other places we could put our energy. I was gonna segue into a different question there, but I want to pass the mic to Gabby.
Yeah. I really feel like what's so insidious about it is that they kind of create these alternative truth streams, truth in quotation, heavy quotation marks, where they kind of use like a lack of trust in sort of mainstream, authorities on these different subjects, and position themselves as like the trustworthy ones when, really that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating to me, especially how the alternative health movement really became politically radicalized during COVID. And there were some occultists, one in particular, I kind of exposed, someone leaked to me the stuff he was saying in his little private group. And it was so horrifying. I mean, he was fantasizing about killing doctors and nurses, just saying like we're gonna line them up like snitches and prison guards.
Oh, I remember that guy.
You remember that? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Something. Yeah, he wrote something about shoals and sigils. If anybody's looking for a clue.
So he was saying a lot about. Well, first, he was part of this sort of occult network, paranormal podcasters and things like that really went so hard right. And that one of his buddies, I'll never forget, was encouraging people during the height of the pandemic in Los Angeles, which was seeing a lot of people dying, to go out and go to COVID speakeasies, they were actually rationing oxygen in Los Angeles. And this guy's like, just go, he was publicizing these underground events where people were going unmasked, just completely disbelieving in the pandemic. And you hit something on there, Gabby, where you said the distrust in institutions, and they definitely we realize that institutions have lied to us. That's what leads a lot of people into these alternative spaces. Like, we know the government has lied about UFO sightings since the 1940s. We know that, sometimes, pharmaceutical companies might fudge data or something like that. But it's a whole other thing to completely reject all institutional knowledge, and people who are in public health trying to save human lives. That's why they get into it. And to suddenly brand all those people as evil enemies of the truth and things like that. And it was just discouraging. I was working at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, and I was actually copy editing the COVID guidance that was going out. And it would change, because they would learn things and it would change. But these people, I watched I talked to the researchers, I talked to the medical people who were trying, and some of the most committed, hardworking people during the pandemic. They spent so much of their energy and time trying to help and get things right. And then you've got these crazy people, saying they're all lying to you. This vaccine's full of nanoparticles and 5G is going to activate, and, yada, yada, yada. And they're just pushing this nonsense. And I couldn't do it anymore. And there was a great book. It was called, I forget the full title, but I think the subtitle, and it was about conspiracism. And it's one of those things that the Orange Menace used to say is when they would ask him about something well, is the vaccine bad for you? And the answer these people would give is, well, a lot of, some people are saying, or a lot of people are saying, and that's what conspiracism became. Well, is Wayfair trafficking children through their website, and sending you a child when you order a cabinet? Well, I don't know, but a lot of people are saying, and it's just absurd that became what was driving so many of these people. They just grab onto anything because the narrative made them feel better. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's so much we could say about that, but.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just a little bit on my background. I majored in sociology, and one of the classes I took as part of my degree was based around cults, conspiracies, and moral panics, and the shared mechanisms between them. And there really is very little difference between a conspiracy theory and a cult at this point. The mechanism of how they get you involved. Like Michelle mentioned, they're in groups and out groups, and you want to be on the in group because they typically target people who are already kind of isolated, who are already looking for community. They take advantage of, that need to feel accepted. And then once you're in it, you're fed all this information, and, there's part of your brain that tells you this doesn't really make sense. A lot of these people, they don't immediately start thinking everybody's a lizard person, but they see these politicians are kind of sketchy. They're doing weird things. They're engaging in stuff that I would never do. So clearly they must be the other. They must be something else. And then it's boiling the frog, where eventually they get to a point where they're so deep in this community. They have friends, they have connections, they know people. They can't admit to themselves anymore that they've been duped. So they have to just entrench themselves more and more and more. And I'm really glad that, you both got out of it when you did, because as we see, once you're past a certain point, it's so hard to really get out of it, because yeah, you're psychologically, like, there's part of you that needs to be accepted by this group, no matter what nonsense they're telling you, and no matter how loud, that cognitive dissonance is. Like you mentioned, people who are very loving, caring people suddenly being super anti-Semitic. And I'm sure there's a part of them deep down where they know, like, wow, like, maybe I have a Jewish neighbor and they're a lovely person. So clearly not all Jewish people are bad, but they just can't admit they were wrong, because yeah, there's a lot psychologically going on.
Yeah, that's great. The looking at it from a sociological perspective, I absolutely agree. It's cultish behavior. The other thing I wanted to mention, because the one thing that I loved about being deep into that sort of conspiracy thinking is it turns you into like a detective. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, digging through, reading through a book or digging through some documents, and you find something that supports what you're looking for. And it's like an endorphin hit, it's like dopamine. And you're like, yeah. And you share it online with your other conspiracy friends. And they, just like you said, it's that group think. It confirms it. It's an amazing feeling. Like, because you feel like, wow, I am unraveling this mystery, this big conspiracy. I can do my little part. I just found this link. I share it with my friends, and they're like, man, that's amazing. Yes, this guy's tied to this person, blah, blah, the web of conspiracy with all the strings on the corkboard and all that shit. And before you know it, like, it's validating you, it's validating your insight, and it just feels good. So there's an element of this, like, citizen detective thing. It's like what happens when people try to be detectives when someone's murdered or something, all these online detectives, and they can really destroy people's lives, as we've seen. Yeah. When they like, oh, well, look, this guy, it's got to be this guy. And then you've got these online vigilante mobs descending on people, and you find out it had nothing to do with that person, but they're getting doxxed and they're getting threatened, and it's just crazy. It's sad, and it's depressing. What these technologies that we originally thought were so liberating and so empowering can be turned so violently and against people. It's really, really distressing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like with that gamification, it's like it feels like that game, and you just want to keep playing, and you don't want to admit, like, you were wrong the whole time, or, wrong about certain things, because it's really hard to admit that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I am really enjoying this talk. We are coming up on an hour. Would anybody like to, is there anything else that we're kind of missing that I'm looking here? I think we could. Michael, I want to talk to you about AI, but I think that should be its own episode. How would you feel about coming on sometime in the future?
Yeah, well, I could certainly, I could rant nonstop for an hour about AI. Probably 6 hours at this point, but yeah, I could just, if people were interested, until we do that, I wrote a piece called "Kill the Robots" that's on Medium, and I call it a humanifesto.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, sure. It's well, I am very anti AI, LLMs in particular, large language models, chatbots. Mm-hmm. I realize that there are uses for these machine learning systems in first of all, like I'm all for when I'm typing a message and something underlines my misspelling. I'm all for dumping a podcast and having it transcribed or things like that. Like, sure, there are uses for this technology, but what I'm seeing is the way chatbots and large language models are being forced upon people, and what they're doing to the creative arts, what they're doing to people's brains, what they're doing to education. I just completely, I find it reprehensible. We didn't ask for this technology, and the way it's being, I've been places where I've heard employers say things like, "We need to use this. This is amazing technology. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to love it. You need to embrace it." And in the meantime, they're building these enormous data centers that are powered by fossil fuels and sucking water out of the planet that is needed for people, and disrupting. Of course, they pop these data centers in communities, marginalized communities, underserved communities that can't really push back. And, our electricity bills are going up. More fossil fuels are being burnt. Like, for what? What are we really getting out of this?
Yeah.
And what are we losing? What are we losing in our humanity and our ability to think? I mean, I am a writer. I believe in the power of language, of words. I've worked my entire life at this craft of writing. But I also realize, like, I'm not just talking about like, I write books and sell them, but writing helps you think.
Yeah.
Figuring out what words you're putting down. It's like, it's our most precious ability is language and writing. Like, that's how societies are created and maintained. And we're offloading this to these stupid, lying robots that honestly can't, they call it hallucinations. They can't hallucinate. They don't have a mind. There is no intelligence. It's just an algorithm.
Yeah, it's a really fancy autocorrect or autocomplete.
Yeah. And it's ingested 3 of my books. It's sucked up the art, the visual art of artists that I know. And it's the cultural effects of this technology is so astonishingly bad. Like, it's having so many ill effects. And on top of that, like, the idea that these systems are going to gain consciousness, it is just the most absurd thing of all. I have very strong beliefs about consciousness, and consciousness to me is not localized. I feel like there's a lot of research that shows that consciousness is non-local. Consciousness doesn't come out of putting machines together. Consciousness arises in us as biological beings that have this, whatever spark that it is that comes to life in us, that is consciousness. These machines are nowhere near the complexity. There's just, it's nonsensical to believe that they're suddenly going to start thinking like we think, that they're going to develop consciousness. Just absurd from all sorts of angles. But they're pushing this. They keep telling us this. These machines are going to take over. They're going to obliterate humanity. Now, they might do that just because they're machines that are given too much power, but they're not thinking. They're not conscious entities. They're not going to be conscious entities. To think that you can make a chatbot conscious is the equivalent to me of thinking you could take some chemicals and some carbon and make a butterfly out of it, a living butterfly. Right? It's not going to happen. It's so on so many levels. That's a taste of what I've written about. But really, what this piece is, it's a humanifesto that is in defense of biological creativity, of human consciousness, of consciousness itself. And I don't get too like deep in the woo in this because it wasn't written for that audience, you know. But I think between the three of us, we understand that like there are anomalies and there are things we don't understand about consciousness that kind of push back against just a physicalist or materialist a conception of what consciousness is. It's that hard problem, they call it, of consciousness. Like we can't explain it. We don't know how it arises. We don't know how it works. The people who think very hard about this have a very hard time modeling consciousness, how it arises in us, much less that we can make some simulacrum machine that somehow we think that our brain is a computer. Brain's not a computer. Our brain is this wet collection of electricity and neurons and cells, and we have no fucking clue how I'm talking now, how I feel me, how whatever is happening is how we can share ideas and thoughts, how consciousness even exists. They cannot figure it out. So the idea that suddenly we can just model a machine, however crudely, I mean, incredibly crudely compared to our biological brains, and have consciousness arise is just absurd. So, but the piece gets into all the environmental aspects, which are just really the main reason and the principled reason why I do not use this technology, and try to encourage others to avoid it as much as possible. Like, yeah, you can have Chat GPT take your email that you're writing and make it more friendly or make it more formal or whatever. But you know what? You could use your brain to do that too. Yeah. And, you know, so just like watching what's happening, like my kids are very, very anti-AI because they've seen it. They're both college age kids and they've watched what it does. Like, you know, I've talked to my friends that are school teachers who get a paper now and they're like, I can't grade this, you know, like how much of this is chatbot generated? I don't know. Like, can this kid write effectively? And what's even worse is like some of my writing now, people are like, oh, that sounds like AI. I'm like, no, I use M dashes, man. I love my M dashes. Like you'll take my M dashes when you pry them from my cold dead hands. Like, no, I refuse. And, so just in so many ways, this technology is just toxic, literally toxic to the environment, but also like toxic to human culture. It's just astonishing to me that it's been adopted and really just forced on so many people and made to seem like it's inevitable. Like you need this. You need to use this. If you're looking for a job, you need to be able to use. No, you don't. You know, we got along fine without it.
Right. 100% with you.
Very little gets me fired up as much as this topic. So yeah, it's probably best saved for another.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's a valid conversation to have, and I'm with you. I withhold using generative AI on environmental and moral and some spiritual grounds, and while also recognizing that, you know, if it helps someone detect cancer quicker, then yeah, I'm all for that kind of thing. But I guess like, yeah, I don't even know. Another conversation. Somehow, like, yeah.
I'm with you. I mean, there are uses of this technology, but it's not the uses that are being like force fed to everyone.
Yeah.
You know, like, sure, if it helps you code, great. But really, when you look at even people that are using it for coding, even these best case scenarios for LLMs, they fall apart in reality for a lot of people. Like there are a lot of people using them for coding, but then they realize they have to hire people to look it over to see where it's wrong. And then, well, then we'll use an LLM to debug the code. But even that starts breaking down. So, I'm all for, I'm not saying there's no use for this technology, but it's certainly not something that people should use just because it exists, especially with the environmental, the horrifying environmental consequences of it.
Like essentially every time you run an AI query, you are hurting a underserved community where these data centers have been plopped down, and you're wasting water that could be used to like create nourishment in life somewhere else. And that's just, you have to look inside yourself and see, is that somebody that you want to be? And and you look at the people that are, making this technology, and they're like the fascist tech bros, and this to them, this is not this generous gift to humanity that they've developed, the way they portray it. This is a means of control. This is a means of just making them more money, and they'll pimp these ideas of it being able to, get rid of all human disease and give us a life of leisure. They said the same thing in the 50s. We were supposed to have like computers were coming in the 50s, and we were supposed to have like a 3-hour work week. And now like this gig economy's got everybody like constantly on the precipice of a mental breakdown. And so fuck all that noise.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Well said.
Yeah, and plus there's like the whole surveillance aspect of it as well. Like if you're opening up this chat bot and say you've got like a health issue and you're talking about it with your little AI agent, now that company that owns the AI bot has all of that information, and who knows what they're going to do. Maybe they're going to sell it. Maybe they're going to create databases. Like we really don't know.
Yeah, they're definitely going to sell it. I mean, that goes without saying. If the product you're using, like they say about social media, if the product you're using is free, you are the product. Yeah. And that's exactly because these companies they can't really make money as they're set up now. They're burning billions of dollars with this technology, and they're slowly starting to like jack up the cost of tokens for people using it. But for the average consumer who's not going to fork out what a company can to use this technology, your data is how they're going to make money. I mean, that's guaranteed. It's guaranteed that they are collecting all of this, even if they say they're not. That's their monetization angle for consumers, for sure. Just like it is with Facebook and Instagram and every other social media out there, for sure.
Mike, I would say that's maybe a good place to wrap this up if everybody's comfortable. And I'm hesitant to ask where people can find you now, but what's next on the horizon for you, and where can people find you?
Well, the easiest place to find me and all the stuff I do is my website, which is michaelmhughes.com. I'm also on Facebook. Yes, still, because we have to be, because that's where all our, crazy relatives are. Right. Instagram a little bit, but Instagram's never really been that my thing, but I am on Instagram. Blue Sky, I'm on a lot now. Of course, I removed all of my content from X because, why would anyone be on X anymore? And that was very liberating. I built up like a lot of followers there and everything. But it was great just to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And I've never looked back. So Blue Sky, you can find where I'm most commonly posting stuff. But my website, Michael M. Hughes, my tarot courses, you can find linked to from there if you're into tarot. I have 2 online courses, tarot, like a kind of a foundational course, and a course on tarot magic. And I also teach like in-person stuff around the Baltimore, DC, Virginia area. And I'm hoping to do more of that because I love like being out and about and meeting people. So if you're in that general area, even if you're not, just sign up for my mailing list, and that's how you can see all my stuff.
Sweet. And we had a charity shout out you wanted to talk about. We've got www.farmsanctuary.org. Tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, I love Farm Sanctuary. I have been a vegetarian for like 35 plus years now. So the bulk of my adult life, it's the best decision I ever made. I really believe that, in some enlightened future, we'll look back and see how we treated animals that we use for food, especially factory farms and these giant, horrific CAFOs, confined animal farm organizations, things like that. It's just brutal. And what Farm Sanctuary does, they take animals that they rescue from some pretty horrific conditions, farm animals like chickens, sheep, cows. And I've really just admired what they do. They do a lot of education, and they just save the lives of these animals from really brutal, horrific conditions. So they were I think the first farm animal sanctuary in existence. They've been at it for a long time. So, and I adopt a turkey every year. Thanks to my family and I, they have a number of turkeys. You can choose one of the turkeys. So we always adopt a turkey at Thanksgiving, which feels good. Feels good to know that there's one lucky turkey out there that's staying off somebody's table.
Aww,
that is awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us with another episode of The Eternal Void, but with jazz. If you would like to help support the podcast, we have a Ko-Fi link in the show notes. So if you have a couple extra dollars or pounds, yen, whatever money you have, please consider leaving us a little donation, and we will see you again next week. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.